Hello and welcome back to the Wisdom of Odin. My name is Jacob Toddson, and for the last 6 years I've been making videos on Norse paganism, polytheism, the gods, shamanism, and everything in between. And over the last 6 years I have been exploring, experiencing, and researching the beliefs of the past in order to share them with you here online. The subject of today's video comes from a comment I actually got recently. Someone asked me if I was an atheist now, meaning I don't believe in gods in general. And so this got me thinking, what is my own personal relationship to the gods today? And so in this video, we're going to be discussing a little bit of the history of our personal human relationship with gods and deity and the identity of that. And then I'm going to be sharing with you my own personal thoughts on the gods and whether or not they exist, to what extent do they exist, where do they exist. Now, of course, if someone came up to me right now and said, Jacob, what is the nature of the gods and the universe and all of this? I could give them this long-winded answer that I'm about to give you in this video, or I do believe I have a simple phrase that I think encapsulates what I believe the gods are. And that simply is, the gods are teachers. And that's all it needs to be. If that's enough for you, great, because honestly, that's what I feel, that's what I embody, is the simplicity of that phrase, the gods are teachers. But if you do want to listen to me ramble, that's coming up after a brief message about where this channel is going and my own personal work spiritually. So my update for this video that I wanted to share with everyone is the fact that I'm taking a different life direction a little bit. And this is something that I've been posting about on Instagram a little bit more, and that's the fact that I'm exploring the art of tattoo and what that looks like within a ceremonial lens. Now, this is something that's not unique. Other people do this, and it's definitely something I've been inspired to do by a lot of great artists from around the world. It's something that I'm still new at. I'm currently working as an apprentice here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so if someone is interested in exploring what ceremonial tattoo looks like, you can actually inquire about it. Just go to my website, jacobtoddson.com, and you can send me an email or just message me on Instagram, and I'll answer any questions you have. And you can actually get tattooed by me if you'd like. Obviously, I'm still new, still learning, and yeah, just looking forward to sharing with you more, and I may show you more of the shop, the process, and what ceremonial tattoo looks like in a future video. But with that, let's go ahead and deep dive into this conversation discussing the gods and whether or not they do actually exist. I think to understand the identity of what gods are, it might be easiest to kind of go back into the very far past and walk our way forward. Our human history is at least 200,000 years, or it changes all the time. And the thing that's so fascinating is that so much of that history is lost to us. We really only know kind of the last 10,000 years, and even then it gets a little shaky pretty fast. And it should always be said that because we don't have the written source material, the first-hand accounts, our first-hand accounts into civilization only go far back as, the Mesopotamian times and things like that. And then even then, we just don't know that much when it comes to the rest of the world. But through understanding indigenous cultures, uncontacted peoples, the way that tribal cultures worshipped and celebrated and understood the universe is probably pretty similar to how a lot of the tribal nomadic people understood the world. And typically the tribal indigenous cultures are more animistic than they are polytheistic. Animist being that they understand that everything has a soul, everything has a piece of the godliness, everything has a breath of the world around us. So understanding that the soil that I'm standing on, the tree that is next to me, what makes me up, the rocks, the stone, the wind, all of this has a spiritual connection. And this is where we see a lot of shamanism come into play too, is shamanism was the way that they contacted these things to commune with them. And then on top of that, they would have local deities to some extent. They would have special trees, like this is my special tree. And I think that's interesting as we continue the conversation on Norse paganism, Germanic paganism, is we know they had a very deep connection to individual trees. And that's something that when Christianity came in, they were trying to destroy. There are many accounts of Christians coming through, finding the sacred groves, the sacred oaks, and destroying them. Irminsul being a great example of that, the Germanic people. So individual trees could have godliness to the Germanic people even 1,500 years ago. When we start reaching the civilization stage, when we start moving forward as a species away from our tribal roots, we start moving towards building cities, that's when it appears that we started having more concrete understandings of what individual gods were. And of course, the structure that I'm standing next to right now is very much in the Greco-Roman style. And this is probably the best example from antiquity, but of course the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians as well. As soon as we start building civilizations as a species, we start formalizing our gods into more concrete structures because we can build more concrete structures. So I really think that we can see the evolution of the god identity within our evolution of humanity and civilization. And it's important to note that even though that we've been in this, 2,000 year period, 1,500 year period of worshiping one god, typically, the most popular religions in the world are monotheistic right now, but for thousands of years, I mean, we can barely grasp that. Thousands of years of the Egyptian period, the Mesopotamian period, the Roman period, the Greek period, thousands of years more than the civilization that we currently live in, we were polytheistic. We were worshiping multiple gods and structures similar to this one. And I think that's a very important thing to kind of remember, is that we've not been monotheistic for very long. And that's what I find very funny about monotheism, is because monotheism so fiercely defends the idea that there's only one God, especially when there's 3 different religions trying to argue that they have the one definition of God figured out. But yet, for a long majority of our human species, we were animistic and we were polytheistic. So I think there's 2 arguments to be had here. One, either we are truly polytheistic, and it's because of our devotion to civilization, our humanity, our own personal ego, or even our desire for power, that I think we became a one God culture, because one God is so much easier to control, so much easier to manipulate people when there's only one God identity. Or 2, perhaps when it comes to one God identity, is because we've evolved more as a species and realized that we've had to cast aside our pagan understanding of how gods work and realize that it's all one God, and that's what we need to worship. So that's ultimately up to you and your personal beliefs, what you actually will worship and believe in. I know the Hindus have the idea of the Brahman, and the Brahman being that most of the gods, I think, are what they call avatars, are many different aspects of the same being. That we all everything kind of comes from one great being, but they have many different faces. And maybe that's a little bit more of a meshing of the 2 ideas of a monotheistic belief system and a polytheistic belief system. I do actually have a singular question I want to ask you for this video, so please let me know your thoughts down below. When it comes to the gods, there is an idea that they could all just be ancestral spirits, and that we're all just worshiping an ancestor that did something great in the far past, especially when it comes to like Odin, right? So you have this story of Odin, hanging from a world tree and all this, and what if this is just a mythological, poetic story of something some crazy dude did thousands of years ago, and then that identity becomes godlike. And then you also have like the Buddha. The Buddha was a human being that ascended into enlightenment and then achieved godlike status, including creating an entire religion around it. And so, are all the gods actually these celestial beings? Or are they this aspect of humanity that has become mythological over time through our aspects of storytelling? Let me know in the comments below. I believe that the Norse people, for the most part, were not polytheistic for very long. I think they became more polytheistic as they interacted with Christianity and as they interacted with the greater world. But I think they had much more of a concept of the localized deities. And we talk about Odin now, we talk about Thor now, Freya, but these gods were much more tied to the elite class of people. The normal everyday people didn't deal with the gods very much, from what we can tell. They may have dealt with them like once or twice a year during certain festivals, and then it was more or less you came with the offering, you said, please don't hurt us, gods. And otherwise you interacted with the local land spirits, the local deities, the ancestors and things like that. And so I do think that there was much more of an emphasis on the localized identity of the gods rather than the Greco-Roman tradition of the high beings that were worshipped in a very formal way. Now, I could be wrong on this, but this is just my own intuition based on the research that I've done over the years. So let me know your thoughts down below. Were the Norse people, the Germanic people, were they more polytheistic or were they more animistic? I'm personally in the middle of animistic and polytheistic. And I think a lot of this has to do with shamanism. And this is where I want to answer a question of like, Where do the gods exist, if they do exist? Do they truly have these holy kingdoms in the clouds? Do they exist on another planet? You know, there's a lot of different theories out there, but I think the thing that makes the most sense to me is the shamanic worldview, is the three-tiered system, basically, is you have the upper realm of the gods, the middle realm of us and the spirits around us, and then the lower realm, which is the primordial spirits, the ancestors, and things like that. And then, of course, Yggdrasil is broken down better. I actually like the Yggdrasil model of having 3 realms up here, 3 realms in the middle, 3 realms in the bottom, or any kind of mixture of those things. And through my own personal UPG, my own personal experiences with shamanic vision questing, you know, just having drums, no plant medicines, there very clearly is entryways into different realms when you start doing that stuff. And it's interesting because it's not pure fantasy. In fantasy, you know, you probably would be able to have more control, but I've kind of reached realms through shamanic vision questing that you're kind of denied from. Like, I've tried to go to the realm of Odin, go to the realm of Freya, and it's very hard to enter these places at times, and you're not allowed. And it is a journey to climb the tree, to go to the upper realm. So I do think that there's a spiritual world. Like, we have our physical reality, we have the, you know, world that we live in, and then I do believe that there is a spiritual world that we have access to. And it is that spiritual world that possibly lives, like, is right among us. You know, it's the unseen world. It's the fact that, you know, even though the trees, we can't watch them grow, you know, but we can at the same time. You know, I can't just sit here and like watch the leaves grow out, but they are growing. The fact that the trees are growing around me, the fact that the stones are changing, the earth has magma below me. There's so much science to the unseen world that I do believe it exists, and not to mention energy in general. And so I can't tell you exactly where the gods are, but there is something to the spiritual unseen world that we can connect to through trance, through plant medicines. And I do think that we as humans have very limited access to what we are able to see and process, and that's why things are absolutely crazy. One of the fun things I've kind of learned recently is the idea of the mysteries, is that the mystery of life, the mystery of the gods and all this, that's part of what gives them their magic. And so trying to quantify them, boil them down so much, that's what will take away that magic if we try to define what the gods are too much. You know, looking at the sun that's burning my skin right now. The sun, the god of the sun. That is a gigantic ball of nuclear energy that we barely understand, that is so much bigger than the planet that we live on. I mean, it's hundreds of times bigger than us. And it is just a gigantic ball of energy that has been around for millions and billions of years and will be around for millions and billions of years more. That's a god. And I do not understand it. But what I can understand is that it gives me life. It gives me energy. It gives me warmth. It fuels the plants that I eat. It fuels the plants that are eaten by the animals that I eat. And it is a life giver. Does it have a consciousness? Maybe. Maybe it talks in such long riddles that we cannot understand it because it takes so many years, so many thousands of years for it to say a single word, because it exists so much longer than we do. And we just can't hear it because we're not attuned to the frequency in which to hear the sun. Same with the trees. That tree's older than me. It'll probably be here longer than me. What language does it speak? How can we listen to the trees? And I think that's ultimately what the ancestors understood, is a methodology in which we can connect to those unseen and unheard voices that we can't translate for ourselves. And that's my long-winded monologue of saying that the mysteries of life are so beautiful. The whispers of the trees are so magical. And we in our modern society, once we got into civilization, started losing that ability. And that to me is so much more important, of understanding that ability to hear these things and connect to these things, than trying to boil down and define what the gods are. And yet here I am making a whole video about it. And we've arrived full circle back to the gods are teachers. And that's what I truly believe and embody. And what I mean by that is, again, I don't want to overcomplicate my relationship to the gods. To me, every aspect of this world, the tree, if we see every aspect of this world as gods, as these amazing things that can teach us, as teacher, what can the sun teach me? What can this tree teach me? What can Odin teach me? What can Thor teach me? These aspects of humanity, of strength, of wisdom, of love, of justice, of trickery. What can these things teach me as a person? And I think when you go into a situation religiously, spiritually, and you look at all of these aspects as teachers, you're going to walk away learning something. And so that's what's allowed me to kind of go to different spiritual spaces and learn from different people, is that I believe all the gods can teach us to some degree. And I think that is why I am not monotheistic, and why I think monotheism is dangerous when monotheism is combined with this identity of there is only one God. And there is a very aggressive, belligerent stance against other gods existing. Is if there was just one identity, one God, then we're losing a great aspect of our humanity, and that is the many thousands of years of history that we have tied to so many different gods of so many different names and aspects. All the gods, especially the Norse, are flawed, and that's what I love about them. They are flawed beings, and we can learn from them because we ourselves are flawed. So the idea that there is one perfect being is kind of dangerous, I think. And I think we've seen what that danger exists in our world. We still see it now in the three monotheistic religions that are at war with each other constantly because they all think they have the one right way of doing things. And even within their own monotheistic cultures, they have multiple different sects and beliefs that all think they have the one right way of doing things. And that is incredibly dangerous. And I think that is one of the things we need to leave behind in this hopeful next stage of humanity, is this identity of there being one right way to do things. All the gods have something to teach us. I have my flavor of things. I have my flavor of understanding my preferred teachers. And I've learned so much from the gods in my life, from the trees, from the sun, from the earth. They've taught me so much, and I'm so grateful for it. And in this current world we live in, this beautiful world we live in, we're all in desperate need of more teachers. Thank you so much for joining me for this video, and in future videos I want to explore a little bit more of what I discussed earlier when it comes to ceremonial tattoo. And with that, I am diving into symbolism when it comes to the Norse, the Celtic, and everything in between. And so my future videos are going to be exploring different symbols when it comes to the ancient world as I explore them myself. And so if you're interested in those videos coming up, make sure you subscribe and all that good YouTuber stuff. And I look forward to sharing with you more of my explorations into the ancient past and how those traditions still survive today.